Okay, Biff, as I told you, nice to see you again, to talk to you. And first, I have to say congratulations again for a new great Saxon album. It's incredible when we are talking about this because in the last 5 interviews I talked with you about the last albums of Saxon to say something, I said exactly the same. Congratulations for a new great Saxon album. How do you feel with this? Because you are doing really, really well in the last years with the last albums.
Yeah, we've been on a good roll. Chemistry is good and inspiration is good. It must be something to do with the rock gods on high.
It's very interesting because I don't know if you are aware to say something that you are releasing the best albums in the last part of the career. For example, Carpe Diem was amazing, Sacrifice was amazing, and the new album, Hellfire and Damnation, is still amazing. It's incredible to listen to a new album. Okay, this is Saxon nowadays. This is the last album, and it's as good as any classical album that you can mention.
I think a lot of people think this is our best album ever, including Wheels of Steel and Denim and Leather. So it's crazy times really. We're always trying to write the perfect song, the perfect album, but I don't think you ever succeed in that. But we're always trying to write great songs. We're songwriters really, and Brian joining the band, brought a new dynamic to the band, songwriting wise. So I co-wrote 3 songs with Brian, although Doug was involved in 2 of them. But yeah, we wrote 3 songs together, me and Brian. So it made a big difference to the album, I think.
So it's very interesting and it's very important talking about that album because, okay, first thing is that Paul Quinn is not with the band anymore, or especially talking about the album side and that, well, life exactly the same. And Brian is on. I was talking with Brian the last week. I was making an interview with Brian and we were talking exactly about that because it's very interesting that he was a perfect election, a perfect option because you are same age, same background, same history, same taste in some sense. And I think that he has fit perfect in the Saxon way to say something, in the Saxon camp.
Yeah, I think Brian, he thinks he's still got a lot to say musically. I think he thinks he's still got a lot to bring. And I think being in Saxon puts him in front of more people. So, he's really excited about being in Saxon. It's sad that Paul gone off and doing his other thing, but he didn't really want to play heavy metal anymore and tour the world and sweat and groan and run around. And, the pressure to write great songs is always big on musicians, So he just wanted to chill and play blues music. So that's what he's doing. And, we're still friends with him. I was talking with him yesterday. He might get up and jam with us a couple of times on the UK leg of the tour. So everything's good.
How do you feel without Paul? I mean, you were partners in crime since the beginning until now, and of course, we know the reasons. We know that he don't want to continue playing heavy metal, touring, blah blah blah. But the point is that anyway, it's going to be strange in some sense, and especially for you, especially in the beginning, the first days that you were working without Paul. But what do you want to say about that? How do you feel without Paul in this sense nowadays?
Well, it's sad to not be with Paul, but I think Brian stood in really well. I think the fans love Brian, and Paul is still a part of Saxon, and he's still with us. He's still part of the family, so he's not gone. He's just moved into somewhere else. He's moved into a new apartment.
Yes, and probably I guess that's
it's branched out from the family a little bit, So.
Yes, I mean anyway that Paul, the same situation than Glenn Tipton with Judas Priest, that in some shows, special dates or whatever, probably he can join the band.
Exactly, it's exactly the same.
Perfect. Okay, let's talk about the album. Let's talk more things about the album, and Hellfire and Damnation, as I told since the beginning, absolutely great album. I'm totally happy you can listen the next new album of Saxon. It's always amazing, great one. Well, I think that everyone is telling you some sort of similar things. That fantastic album, great one. It sounds amazing. So, well, what do you have to say in that sense? That everyone is telling you that the new album, the last album, is fantastic, and that. How do you feel that you are doing really well with this?
It was great.
The album is working really well. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, we worked really hard on the album. It wasn't easy to write this album. We did have a very strict time deadline to get it out before the tour started in March with Judas Priest and URIAH HEEP. So, so we all pulled our fingers out and, highly motivated. We wrote and recorded it in Germany. We did the drums there and the bass. Then we came to UK, to my studio. We did the guitars and vocals there. Then we went to Andy Sneak's place and finished it. So it was quite a quick recording. It was loud and fast, is what we say in the business.
Very good. Okay. I'm talking about the songs in general. I don't want to talk about one song and the other one and the other one and blah, blah, blah. But in general, which ones are your favorite songs in the album? Because we can talk about many, many songs. Since the beginning, you had songs about historic things from Crusader until 10,066, or there's something in Roswell that you are talking about aliens. You have songs in, well, whatever the single, the first one, Hellfire and Damnation. I don't know, which ones are your favorite songs on the album and why?
I like Madame Guillotine. That's a pretty cool song. Very catchy. It's a very dark subject. But the chorus is a bit like Alice Cooper. It's a bit lighter, the chorus. So I like the way that song sounds. It's a pretty cool song, actually.
Especially, I want to talk about Pirates of the Airwaves, because it's a song very special for me in this sense, and I think for the people who are working in this, especially the people who, like me, we have radio programs. It's like a great tribute to the first radio programs, the first pirate radio stations, the people who are always fighting for this since the beginnings, 45 years after, and even now it's exactly the same. And well, it's a very good tribute to say something for those people, and especially it's again a tribute to heavy metal, to the underground heavy metal. I mean, the people who were fighting for playing music for the people to listen heavy metal, rock and roll. I remember a film, probably you know that film, of course, that in English is called The Boat That Rock. In Spanish is called Pirate Radio. That is exactly about that. And well, I think that Pirates of the Airwaves is a very, very special song in this album. And I have to say thank you for giving us words about it.
Well, I think DJs are important, because radio stations still, it's very easy to listen to radio. It doesn't really take a lot of technology to listen to radio. You can listen to it in your house, in your car, in the bath, on a ship, on a plane. So it's a great way of listening to music through radio. And in the 60s, radio was controlled by the government in the UK. And we couldn't really get, when I was like 12, 13 years old, we couldn't really get to hear the songs we wanted to hear. So we had to listen to pirate radio, and we had these little transistor radios from Japan, little things we used to tune in next to your ear through the static. And when you come up with a pirate radio station from Luxembourg or from the North Sea, Radio Caroline, playing songs that the BBC wouldn't play. So it was great revolution in music in the 60s in the UK.
Here, worldwide, or in Spain, or in Great Britain, or in France, or whatever, it's still very important to listen to the radio programs, the heavy metal or rock and roll radio programs, to listen, for example, Saxon in the mainstream radio. It's impossible to listen the new album of Saxon to say something, or Judas Priest or whatever. We have to listen again the underground programs to say something. So again, my same not question, but same words, that congratulations for giving us credit for those kind of things. And for Saxon, it's important to have our programs to still raising the music and blah, blah, blah.
It is important, especially if you're touring, because if you're coming to town and a local radio station, if you come into town and a local radio station plays your music, then the concert you sometimes has more people because
Yes.
the radio station supports the venue. So it is important, and I still listen to rock radio in the car. In England, it would be Planet Rock or Kerrang Radio, one of the rock stations, because mainstream radio doesn't play Saxon really. It might play 747 once a year, or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, it's true.
Wheels of Steel or something. But no, we don't get played on mainstream radio. So the local stations and the stations that specifically play rock music, heavy rock, heavy metal are really important for bands like Saxon and for new bands.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the tour with Judas Priest, Saxon, and URIAH HEEP. It's incredible threesome, a package that every fan is dreaming about it, because nowadays it's impossible to see better three bands live than Judas Priest, Saxon, and URIAH HEEP. So, well, first, just in general, how came up everything, and, well, what do you think about this three touring pack that is absolutely amazing nowadays to see that? So how do you feel from inside?
I think it's a fantastic package for people to see, and to see three bands of that caliber and who have had so many great albums over the years, to see those three bands together rocking out is fantastic for people. I think this is why packaging bands together works really well, because you get a lot of people coming to see three bands, and you probably wouldn't get that many coming to see one of the bands. So together, we're very powerful and can pull more people into the venues, really. But that's what it's about, yeah.
It's interesting when I'm thinking in those kind of things, because, of course, I saw Judas Priest many times, Saxon many times, whatever, but I have 45 years old. But for young people who probably are going to see Judas Priest or even Saxon or even URIAH HEEP, maybe for first time, it's very important to can see those packages, as you said, because, okay, the real rock and roll, the real heavy metal, whatever, I'm not talking bad about new bands, of course, but the classic band, Judas Priest, Saxon, and URIAH HEEP is another thing. So did you think in some moment about teaching, whatever we want to say, to the new generations, how is to do that, how is to play heavy metal? Okay, I'm going with Judas Priest, I'm going with Saxon, and I'm going with URIAH HEEP, and you have to learn how we do this.
Don't really understand your question.
No, my question is about that. Yes, I'm a little bit nervous and I'm talking not very well. But my question is about that. If you are thinking in any moment that when you are touring together, Judas Priest, Saxon, and URIAH HEEP, you are teaching something to the new generations.
Well, yeah, because all three bands influenced around now, younger bands that are playing now, really. So it's a fantastic thing, generally our audience, we have a very mixed Saxon audience. We have a lot of young people into the band. And I think it's great. The more people come to see bands like Saxon, Judas Priest, URIAH HEEP, it's in a way, it's showing them how it all started, where metal started from. I mean, URIAH HEEP's first album came out, 1969, did it?
Yes, or 70, whatever. Yes.
68, 69, I know that, which was a fantastic album. The first Priest album came out, middle 70s, did it?
73, I guess, or 74, yes.
Yeah, so, our first album came out 79.
79, yes.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a whole generational thing. You have bands from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, really. We're more looked on as an 80s band because Wheels of Steel was 1980, it was our first big album, so everybody seemed to get into Saxon in 1980. But, it's a great thing for people to see. That huge legacy of music there from all three bands, yeah.
This word is very important, legacy, to keep the legacy alive or whatever. So I thought sometimes about that, and I talked to you in previous interviews about that, for example, now we haven't got Motorhead here, unfortunately, but Motorhead is not here anymore. And okay, for example, Iron Maiden is playing now in the first league, to say something, the same as AC/DC, Metallica, whatever. But in the heavy metal classic way, Judas Priest probably is now the big band. And the next step nowadays is Saxon, because, I mean, without Motorhead, the respect, the idea of who is the most authentic band, whatever, is on Saxon again. Do you feel that? Do you feel that respect from the scene, from the people, even from promoters, to say something that, okay, after Motorhead, I say again, unfortunately, they are not here anymore, but after Judas Priest, we are here, we are Saxon, and we are having now the credit that we deserve.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, a lot of Motorhead fans, came to Saxon after Lenny died. A lot of people came to Saxon. There's a lot of music that's the same with Saxon and Motorhead. Very fast, hard metal music. I think you're probably right. I think we have a lot more respect now from the business, from the media. So I think it's a good time for Saxon at the moment. I think we're probably as popular now as we were in 1986, 85, 86. So yeah, we're quite happy with that. And, this is one of the things that motivates us to make great albums, to try and make great albums, because we know that people are really focused on Saxon now. So we want to give them a great album. That's what it's all about, I think.
Absolutely agree. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the new wave of British heavy metal. As I said, I'm writing a book about it, and I'm talking with some musicians and even people around that to have some information for my book. And I would like to talk to you a couple of things. And first is just in general, starting soft, about 45 years after the new wave of British heavy metal came in or started or whatever we want to say, and nowadays it's still very important for a lot of people. It's still a reference. Okay, new wave of British heavy metal was the beginning of the development of hard rock, heavy metal, blah blah blah, and you have been part of it. You started with this. So after so many years, how do you see the movement, in the sense that you started a movement, and after new wave of British heavy metal, the style changed completely, and you were on the beginning. How do you feel with this?
Well, I think actually the new wave of British heavy metal, it's just a word that sums up the bands of the day, really. I mean, I think the excitement started in 1978, 79, during the punk period. The first tour we did, proper tour we did, was with Motorhead in 1979. And Motorhead were massive in 1979. They were pretty big in the UK. And we toured with them, and their audience became our audience back then, which was a great thing. I mean, by the time it got to 1980, and we released Wheels of Steel, there was a lot of bands by that time that were in that sort of British metal thing. Maiden, obviously Saxon were probably the biggest two. Def Leppard were in it, although they say they weren't. They were. And you had Diamond Head, you had, Praying Mantis, you had Blitzkrieg, you had Witchfinder Gen. You had a lot of bands around in that period, and we were all playing the same shows. And we'd all end up playing together sometimes, in small festivals, and universities would put on, rock shows at the weekends. And so we played together. We played with Maiden quite a few times in 1979. In 1978, they were still around, trying to get signed, and we were all together there. So it was a great time, really. But I think it all really started around 1979, the new wave of British heavy metal. I think the end of the punk, and bands like Motorhead and Judas Priest were already there, They were already strong. And, we went up to their level in 1980, and Maiden did. So all those bands together are what created this movement of British metal, really.
In my book, I'm talking a lot about the social environment to say something, and I'm talking more things about the social movement than the musical movement. Studying that or thinking in that, I think it was very interesting. And the musicians that you were starting in those years, it was young people, of course, very young people in general, people from the street bands or whatever we want to say, people from downtown. And I like the point that probably you were not thinking in that nowadays, but you were in some sense changing the system to say something against whatever we want to say, against the system, against the punk, against the rich people, against, I don't know, whatever we want to say about that.
We were a working class band. We were.
This is the point. That movement was from the working class.
We were self-taught musicians. We didn't go to university or anything like that. So we learned from listening to records, really. But in the late 70s, there was a lot of upheaval in the UK. There was a lot of strikes. There was a lot of power cuts. There was a lot of angry people. And I think bands like Saxon, we sort of tapped into that somehow. That audience really loved Saxon because we were against the establishment. We were saying, backs to the wall, all this never surrender type material that we had then, stand up and be counted. All these songs were very sort of, working class songs, standing up, giving it to the man, as Jack Black would say, that, stick it to the man. But, those days were very, it was in turmoil back then. Everybody was against the government and the police. And bands like ourselves and Maiden came out of that turmoil. And a lot of college and school kids were big fans, The audience was very young in 1980, very young. So, between 14 and 18 years old. So it was a new audience. Mm-hmm. And, that audience, we were one of their favorite bands when that's how it went. Mm-hmm. So that's why we became so popular, because all those people, loved us, loved the music, and loved the band,
Mm-hmm. We have a little controversial in Spain nowadays, not exactly nowadays, in the last 5 years, to say something. I guess that probably in England is the same, or even in France that you were living or whatever, that rock and roll and heavy metal would be for everyone. I mean, posh people, rich people, conservative people can listen rock and roll. And I'm always defending the other idea. We were talking about working class, and especially on the beginning, heavy metal was an answer for whatever we were against. As we said, the rebel things, against the establishment, working class. So I'm still defending nowadays that probably, of course, time has changed. Nowadays, situation in the world is different, but at the same time, the first idea is the same. Heavy metal and rock and roll is working class, is from the left, to say something, is social, is from the street. So it's important to me to listen from the main characters of the style like you, that the idea of heavy metal since the beginning until now was that working class, rebel, for the people on downtown, to say something from the street. So my question about that is, 50 years after, you are still thinking the same, that heavy metal is not for everyone?
It's difficult to say because, I was a young man back in those days. So, I was very sort of, against a lot of things. Still am against a lot of things, really. Injustice and things, I think, people should be innocent until proved guilty, not guilty until proved innocent. So I still have those thoughts, that, the world could be better. But,
mm-hmm.
I mean, speaking from a UK point of view, things are better in the UK than they were in 1980. So I think music can change things, but I just think that it's the people that listen to the music that change things, not the bands. I think it's the people that change things. And if they picked a band to be their sort of person band, then I think that's cool, And I think rock and roll, generally music, I think music has to be for everybody. It can't be selective. Do you know what I mean? There's no way you could stop people listening to your music.
Yes,
But the music was written for working class people, same as we are. That's what the music was written for, and the music's still written for them. Although these days maybe the subject's a bit more intellectual, that we're older now, so we're not pretending to be 19 years old, you know.
I understand, of course. Okay, just a couple of questions just to finish, very short. First one is about, continue with the new wave of British heavy metal, but talking about Saxon, it's even funny that, of course, Motorcycle Men, especially in Wheels of Steel, were like the most important albums. But for me, the most representative is Denim Leather. It's the album who is the most important in those years to show to the world what is new wave of British heavy metal, the sound, the style, the songs. So my question is about that. What do you think about this, and especially about Denim Leather so many years after? For me, it's the most important album in those years, I mean, the most representative album of the new wave of British heavy metal.
Yeah, I think it's the most definitive album of the 80s, but for the British heavy metal movement, I think Denim and Leather is the definitive album, because on that album I'm singing about our audience on Denim and Leather, and a lot of the songs are geared towards how we felt and what happened in those days. So I think you're right. I think Denim and Leather. If you were going to play somebody a record, if somebody said, "What was it like in 1981 in the UK?" then you could play on that record and say, "This was happening. This was the definitive album of 1981." Definitely, it is an album that was the end of that movement, really. 1983, 1984, and people moved on to something else. So Denim and Leather, you're probably right. Yeah, it is the definitive album of that period.
Mm-hmm. I have to tell you that we did in our radio program. We did a special program, 3 hours, just talking about Denim Leather, playing all the songs, and
okay, great.
And I studied a lot to make that special, reading a lot of things about that, and it was my conclusion that Denim Leather was as you said, the definitive album and the most representative and great one. Not only the most known songs. And the bands played on, Denim Leather, blah, 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 but the other songs, Rough and Ready, for example, whatever, Played Loud, they were songs very representative of those years, of those movement, and about Saxon in those days.
Definitely, you're right, yeah.
Okay, so just to finish, last question, Biff, about your inspirations. Of course, I know that in the two cover albums, we have all the info about that, the bands that has inspired you, your reference, but I would like to tell me, in your own words, which ones were the bands that was the real inspiration for Saxon? I guess, of course, UFO, Thin Lizzy, Deep Purple, Zeppelin, I don't know, but tell me which ones were the main bands for Saxon.
I don't think there were any main bands. I just think it was a mixture of all bands, all music. That we just. I think influencers don't work like copying a band. When somebody's music influences you, it's very subtle. I think it goes into your mind, comes out in a different way. So I think all of the bands influence Saxon. I don't think there's one band that influences more than anybody else, There are more bands that we liked better, but I think, as we were looking back, before we were even musicians, just listening to music, I don't think there's one song, one band that influences more than the others did. You've got The Who, you've got Deep Purple, you've got the Animals, you've got the Kinks, you've got, Cho-Cho. A lot of bands in there that we were listening to. And it all comes out in our music. But I don't think one band influenced us. I think it's just, we were influenced in the 60s and 70s. I think in the 80s and 90s, I don't think we were being influenced. I think we were writing our own thing then.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Biff, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for everything. And sorry for my English today. I was really nervous to talk to you about those things. But
your English was good.
We understood anyway. So thank you so much. Yeah. So
see you later. Bye.
We'll see you in Spain again. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye-bye.